If you've ever taken a cruise before, then you'll already know that there are so many additional costs that you need to think about when you plan your cruise. It's so much more than just the cruise fare. In this video today, I'm going to break down 10 of the additional costs that you should be thinking about when it comes to planning your cruise. I've come across so many people out on ships, including me in the past, who have seen a really good deal online, who have jumped to book the cruise, and it's not until they start planning how to get to the ship and how to experience the ship properly once they're on board that they start to realise just how expensive this type of travel really can be. If you enjoy this video today, and if you find it useful, I would really appreciate it if you would consider supporting my channel by clicking the thumbs up button. If you've just found me today for the first time, then I'm Fraser and I use my YouTube channel to share my experiences, my tips and my advice with you to hopefully help you have the best cruise, holiday or vacation yet. Anyway, let's get started with the first additional cost that we're thinking about today, and that is travel to the port. It's really important for you to think about travelling to the port because however you do it, it can be really quite expensive. I used to think that it was really cheap to drive to the cruise port until I then thought about parking. I've met people out on cruise ships who have spent hundreds of pounds or hundreds of dollars to simply park their car securely for the duration of the cruise. So it's worth keeping that in mind and doing a bit of research to see if there are any cheaper alternatives potentially close to the port but far enough away that you can save yourself a little bit of money. If you live further away, then you need to think about things like flights, transfers, a hotel, food and various other drinks and refreshments before and maybe even after the cruise. This is where money can suddenly spiral, especially if that good deal you've found for your cruise happens to be during peak season for whatever part of the world it is that you're travelling to. If I give you the example of Barcelona in Spain, it might be great that you can get a cheap deal on a cruise out of Barcelona in the middle of summer. However, good luck finding a decent hotel for less than a couple of €100 a night. Good luck finding good restaurants that are at an okay price point. The list goes on. It will get very expensive very quickly. The same would apply for peak season in ports like Miami. If there are a lot of ships, there's a huge amount of demand for things like flights and things like hotels. I personally have found myself paying hundreds of pounds for flights. In some cases, I've almost spent as much for the flight as I have for the cruise, which is painful. So yes, number one, always think about travel to the port. Number two, travel insurance. This one might not be too expensive for you if you're travelling to ports that are universally considered safe, or if it's a short cruise, or if you've got no reported health conditions. But if you're older, you're travelling to ports considered higher risk, or if you've got any underlying health conditions, then be careful. And my top tip here would be that you really should plan to shop around. On the next cruise that I'm going on, I'll be docking in the Bahamas, Mexico, Grand Cayman and Jamaica. And I was shocked to see my insurance quote come back last week. I would usually expect for a 7-night cruise to pay about £12, which would be about 15 or 16 US dollars. However, when I submitted my quote, it came back at £81, which would be, I imagine, about 90 US dollars. It was astronomical compared to what I'm used to. I called the insurance company and they explained that it would cost extra to insure me on this trip because I was going to places like Jamaica and Mexico, which to me are big cruise hotspots, and I was surprised to learn that both of them do demand an insurance peak because of the fact that they're considered higher risk. So it's super important to be prepared to shop around for travel insurance because I've taken that £81 quote and I've managed to cut it in half by going with another provider. So in that example alone, it's paid me to look elsewhere. Number 3, and this is a big one, tips or gratuities is an additional cost that so many people, especially first-time or relatively inexperienced cruisers, don't think about. Gratuities or tips with a lot of cruise lines are charged on a per person per night basis, and you'll have the amount simply charged to your onboard account a few days into the cruise. Now, not every cruise line charges nightly gratuities, but in my experience, the majority of them do. The amount does vary by cruise line. I've seen the nightly charge starting around $10 per person per night, but it can go all the way up into the mid-20s dollars per person per night. The reason I keep saying per person per night is because that part here is so important. If you're cruising as a couple or if you're cruising as a family and you're being charged $20 per person per night and you've booked a 14-night cruise, well, that's going to get relatively expensive relatively quickly. If you are cruising as a family, you'll often find that infants are exempt from paying this charge, but it's always good to check with your cruise line before you get caught off guard and it surprises you. Typically speaking, it's those in the fancier cabins or the suites who'll be paying the higher nightly rate. You can opt to prepay your tips or prepay your gratuities before the cruise by simply logging into your online account. You can also remove these charges in most cases by speaking to the team at guest services. However, this is something that I would never recommend doing, and I also wouldn't advise against it. I always maintain a really neutral position due to the fact that it's a very controversial topic, because if people remove the gratuities and the tips and they don't then tip elsewhere around the ship, then yeah, you could argue that's really unfair on the staff. So I always maintain a neutral position, but I would say that with the majority of cruise lines, you can usually speak to guest services to waive the charges and have them removed from your account. Number 4, speaking of tips and gratuities, let's now talk about service charges. Service charges on a lot of cruise lines is a charge that will be applied for a number of the facilities around the ship, but these are entirely different to the gratuities and tips that we've just spoken about. If you're watching this video from the US, the concept of this will probably be much more comfortable to you. But if you're watching from the UK, which is where I'm based, this one might really surprise you and it might actually baffle you. Things like buying a drink from a bar will often come with a service charge, which can then make what you're buying much more expensive than what you were expecting it to be. In my experience, service charges can't then be taken off, so it's one to keep in mind. On a few recent cruises I've taken, I've been at a bar, I've been presented with the cost of the drink on my receipt when I sign for it at the end. The cost of the drink is on there, the service charge is on there, and then there's a blank space for me to enter how much of a tip I would like to leave the server. That then suddenly turns my 1 pint of beer into one of the most expensive pints of beer that I've ever enjoyed. Some cruise lines will advertise a service charge of about 18% of what it is that you're buying. That can apply to things like drinks, spa treatments, beauty salon treatments, so it's always worth checking before you go in to do whatever you're looking to do or buy, whether or not a service charge is going to be applied onto your bill. So definitely bear service charges in mind. Number 5, shore excursions. If you're planning to get off your cruise ship when you're in port to go and explore the ports of call, which I really hope you are because you're on a cruise at the end of the day, if you're planning to use the official cruise line shore excursions, then you need to be prepared to pay for that luxury. There are 2 ways to explore a cruise port when your cruise ship docks. Option number 1 is you go on an official organised cruise line excursion where you'll be taken from the ship onto a coach or a bus. You'll then go to an attraction, you'll see what's going on there, and then they'll bring you back to the ship. Option number 2 is that you can throw your shoes on and go for a walk and see what's around. You can then use public transport, you can use taxis, you can go for a run, you can do whatever you want as long as you're back for the all aboard time, which is usually just before the ship will set sail. This is where we come across our first key difference between exploring independently and going on an excursion, because if you book an excursion and something happens, if you get stuck in traffic or your bus breaks down, for example, then the cruise ship will wait for you. I know so many people who they will pay whatever the cruise line is charging just to have the element of stress removed of what if I miss this cruise ship and it leaves without me? For so many ports, it's more than possible to explore entirely on your own. And this is one of the ways that I've grown my YouTube channel, by trying to show people what cruise ports look like when you get off a cruise ship and you don't take an excursion. If you're planning to take a cruise, which I guess you must be, otherwise you probably wouldn't be watching this video, then come over to my channel and search for the cruise ports that you're planning to visit, because who knows, I might have even been there and I might be able to show you a little bit more about what to expect. Excursions with a cruise line will typically cost a lot more than doing anything independently. If you're visiting a bucket list place, then you'll find some really expensive options on the menu. For example, if you're visiting Alaska, there could be helicopter rides to go on top of glaciers. There could be small boat trips to take you from your cruise ship through the rest of the Panama Canal if you're not planning to do a full transit on your cruise. And these types of experiences can cost hundreds of dollars per person. So if you're solo, that might be okay, but if you're travelling as a couple or a family, that cost is going to stack up. Before I move on to number 6 of this list of 10 additional costs that you should be considering if you're planning to take a cruise, let me tell you about my Amazon store. I launched my Amazon store through the simple realisation that so many people I was meeting just didn't seem to know about the little things that you can take on a cruise with you to make your experience either so much simpler or so much better. For example, a lot of people don't realise that 9 times out of 10, the walls in your cabin, and sometimes even the roof of your cabin, will be metal, and therefore it'll be magnetic. So you can buy magnetic hooks, for example, that you can take on board to display paper, to display anything really on the wall, or maybe even to hang your hat or your belt up when you come in at the end of the day. There are so many different uses. Candles also aren't permitted on cruise ships, so you could take LED candles as another example. There are so many things. I've created an Amazon store which houses everything that you could think about taking, and it's also got a huge collection of cruise-related gifts. So if you know someone who would love a cruise-related gift, and let's be honest, who wouldn't, you might find something over there that could be of use. You can access my Amazon store by heading down to the description of this video, and you'll find a link there, or head down to the comment, which will be pinned at the top of the comment section, and there will be a link over to my website. If you go there, you can then go straight to Amazon. Anyway, hopefully you'll find something there that's of use. Let's move on to number 6, and we're now talking Wi-Fi. Whenever I travel on land, I expect Wi-Fi to be free of charge, and I expect it to be a good connection and a fast speed. I remember years ago when I'd need to pay for Wi-Fi in a hotel for the night, and before I started cruising, I genuinely thought those days were long behind us. Wi-Fi on cruise ships can be so expensive. It can often cost hundreds of dollars to be connected for a week on the basic package. Cruise ships nowadays do have much better connections than they used to through the introduction of things like Starlink, for example, but although the connection speeds have got better and faster, what hasn't really happened is the cost coming down. So you should still expect to pay a handsome amount if you'd like to be on Wi-Fi and remain connected to the outside world while you're on board. There are workarounds. For example, you could use your phone to use mobile data when you're in port. You could buy a travel eSIM. There are so many things that you could do to remain connected without paying for cruise ship Wi-Fi. I've actually got a full video talking to you about this and what I personally do to save some money. I'll link you up to that at the end of this video. On that note, let's move on to number 7, drinks. When it comes to drinks on a cruise, you've got a few different options, with the best value often being to purchase some form of a drinks package. If you're probably going to get through a large amount each day, just remember, only buy a drinks package if you think you're actually going to break even. Otherwise, it's a bit of a waste of money in my opinion. If you only drink soft drinks, then there are usually soft drink or non-alcoholic packages available. Most cruise lines even offer a coffee drinks package, so whatever you want to drink, you can probably buy a drinks package for that, and that'll be billed per passenger per day. With some cruise lines, the drinks package daily charge can be absolutely wild. I've even seen it on some of the cruises that I've been on, where the premium drinks package actually costs more per day than it costs me to take the cruise, which absolutely blows my mind. And in that scenario, I will never order it, because even if I could get through X amount of drinks on day one, I don't think I could then drink that same amount on day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 in order to justify the expense. So if I'm paying more for the drinks package than I paid to book the cruise, for me, it's a no-no. Number 8, onboard entertainment. You've seen the YouTube videos, you might even have seen them on my channel, that show you the surfing simulators, the roller coaster tracks on the top deck, the ice rink, you name it, it's probably on a cruise ship somewhere. But you need to remember that although these things are on the cruise ships and they are available to use, they're not all free of charge. It's really important to do your homework to know exactly what is included on your cruise ship and what you're going to have to pay extra for. It's usually really easy to do this. Just head to your cruise line's website and click through to your ship. It'll usually all be on there. The other option is that loads of cruise YouTubers also have websites where they detail their experience with additional charges on board. If you'd like to come and see what I've found, my website is constantly evolving, and you'll find it over at FRASERATSEA.com. While you're there, why not sign up to my free weekly email newsletter, which will let me touch base with you and let you know what is going on right here at Fraser at Sea. Number 9, laundry. This one applies to you especially if you're going on a longer cruise, or if you're one of those people that likes to go home with no post-holiday washing to do, which, let's face it, who wouldn't like to be one of those people? Now, laundry on cruise ships is something that caught me very much by surprise, and it does frustrate me how different the cruise industry is on this across all of the brands. You'll find that some cruise lines like Cunard or P&O Cruises based in the UK will usually have laundry rooms which are entirely self-service. That means that as a passenger, I can throw all of my dirty laundry into a washing machine. I can then come back 40 minutes later and throw it into a tumble dryer. I can then bring it out and I can iron it. I can do all of that, usually free of charge. I know that Carnival Cruise Line, I can do that, but I have to pay for detergent and washing liquid. But it's so much cheaper than the other method. The other method is to use a full-service laundry facility, which is usually where I would prep a laundry bag, my cabin attendant would come to the room to collect it, and I would then say goodbye to my clothes and just hope that I'll see them again in a day or two's time. They'll then arrive back to the cabin, all beautifully pressed and ready to just go straight into my bag to go home. On the cruise that I'm about to embark on, the unlimited laundry package, which would mean I could get an unlimited amount of laundry done all through the cruise, would cost $59.50 per cabin. It's not per person, it's per cabin. So, in my opinion, that's not a huge price if that's per cabin, but it's definitely worth considering because that's a lot more expensive than what you might be expecting if you're currently thinking in your mind that there'll be a way to do your own laundry when you're on board. Number 10, and this one really is an unexpected additional cost, and that is that anything accidental that could be on your onboard account needs to be considered all the way through your cruise. I've been on cruises before where I'll find on the final day of my cruise there'll be maybe a drink or two that I haven't actually ordered that somehow made it onto my account, probably due to the fact that when I've went to a bar to get my drink, the system hasn't fully been logged off when the next waiter has come in to key in the drink. As a guess, I don't know, I've never worked a till system in a cruise ship bar, but I would imagine that sort of thing would be totally realistic to happen. Now, it's important to remember, cruise ships are huge. They're very busy, there are thousands of other people on board usually, and the crew, as a direct result of that, will have 1,000,001 things to do. With thousands of people on board all trying to get a drink, and at the end of the day the crew only being human, that then could result in a little bit of human error here or there. I've never seen anything too major coming through on my account, but it's just worth keeping in mind to just check your onboard account, maybe just every couple of days, to make sure that it is looking as you would expect it to, rather than getting home and realising, there's charges on here that I didn't check, and I don't think they're mine, because then it will be very, very difficult for you to claim any form of refund. Long story short, budgeting for your cruise is so important. At the end of the day, you're planning a holiday or a vacation here. The last thing you want to be worried about is money the entire time you're on board. You probably want to get on that ship, relax, let your hair down, and just live your best life until you have to go home. I would task you to go through this video and listen to each of the points and see if you need to include them in your cruise budget. Maybe you then want to log into your online account for your cruise and almost build up a bit of a budget to get a feel for how much this could end up costing you, just so that you don't get a fright when you're on board and you can enjoy it to the full. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this video today, and if you have, it would be amazing, as I said earlier, if you could support my channel by clicking the thumbs up button. I'd also love to bring you on so many more ships and adventures going forward. All you have to do to come with me is click the subscribe button, which should be on your screen. Anyway, moving on from this video, if you'd like to stay with me on the subject of costs, why don't you come and join me in this video? Over here, I walk you through some of the things that it's really important that cruisers do with their mobile phones when they go on their cruise. And some of these things could save you an absolute fortune. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll hopefully see you over there.